I'm Ellie, 29 female. I'm an event planner, which means my entire life revolves around schedules, color swatches, and making sure other people's most important moments go off without a hitch. My new husband, Ben, and I live in a cozy little house we've been renovating just outside the city. For years, I had dreamed of my own wedding, planning every detail in my head, and I was determined to make it perfect. But I never could have planned for how my own sister, Vanessa, would turn my dream day into the catalyst for a revenge plot that would expose a lifetime of secrets. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. My wedding day was supposed to be the culmination of a lifetime of planning, not just the year and a half of intense, detail-oriented work since Ben proposed, but the quiet, girlhood dreams I'd had since I was little. Being an event planner gave me a distinct advantage. I knew the best vendors, the secret tricks to get luxury for less, and exactly how to orchestrate a seamless flow from the first guest's arrival to the final, sparkler-lit send-off. The venue was a historic manor with sprawling gardens, booked 2 years in advance. The flowers were a cascade of peonies and white roses, my favorite. The menu was a carefully curated 4-course meal that Ben and I had spent months perfecting with the chef. Every single element, down to the calligraphy on the place cards, was a reflection of us. It was my masterpiece. Ben, bless his heart, was the perfect partner in all of it. As a software engineer, he appreciated logic and precision. While I handled the aesthetics, he created the master spreadsheet, a thing of beauty, with color-coded tabs for the budget, guest list, vendor contracts, and a minute-by-minute timeline for the day itself. He'd look at me across our dining table, buried in fabric samples, and just smile. "Whatever makes you happy, Elle. I just want to see you walk down that aisle." His support was the foundation on which this perfect day was built. We were a team, and this wedding was our first joint project, a beautiful prelude to the life we were about to build. My family, on the other hand, was a more complex variable in the equation. My parents, David and Helen, were thrilled. My dad, a dentist, was practical and a bit reserved, but he had a soft spot for me. He'd call every few weeks to ask if I needed anything, a quiet way of showing his support. My mom, a librarian, was more openly emotional, often tearing up when we discussed details like the father-daughter dance. They contributed generously and trusted my vision completely, which was a gift I didn't take for granted. Then there was my sister, Vanessa. 2 years my senior at 31, Vanessa was a successful real estate agent who thrived on being the center of attention. Where I was meticulous and behind the scenes, she was bold, loud, and always in the spotlight. Growing up, it was just a fact of life. I was the quiet, organized one. She was the charismatic star. She could walk into any room and command it, a skill that served her well in her career, but often left me feeling like a shadow. Throughout the wedding planning, Vanessa's involvement was sporadic and, to be honest, a little strange. She'd ignore my calls for weeks when I wanted to ask her opinion on bridesmaid dresses, then suddenly show up to a cake tasting unannounced, loudly declaring the baker's signature flavor, uninspired, and trying to steer me toward a gaudy, multi-flavored creation that was entirely her taste. She offered to help with the invitations, then forgot, leaving me scrambling to address and mail 200 envelopes a week before the deadline. I chalked it up to her being busy with her high-pressure job and her own dramatic social life. She was my maid of honor, a role she had accepted with a dramatic flourish, so I assumed, perhaps naively, that when it truly mattered, she would be there for me. I wanted her there. Despite our differences, she was my sister, the only one I had. I yearned for that close, sisterly bond you see in movies, and I kept hoping this wedding would be the event that finally brought us together. On the morning of the wedding, the air in the bridal suite was thick with the scent of hairspray and nervous excitement. My bridesmaids, a wonderful group of my closest friends from college and my first job, buzzed around me, keeping my champagne flute full and my spirits high. Vanessa, however, seemed distant. While everyone else was complimenting my dress or helping with my veil, she was glued to her phone, scrolling endlessly, a slight frown on her face. When I asked if everything was okay, she waved a dismissive hand. Just work stuff. A client is being a nightmare. Don't worry about it, it's your day. But her tone was flat, her eyes elsewhere. I felt a familiar pang of disappointment, but pushed it down. I refused to let her moodiness cloud my happiness. Not today. Today was about me and Ben. The ceremony was magical. Standing under a floral archway in the garden, with the late afternoon sun casting a golden glow, I looked at Ben and felt a sense of peace so profound it almost brought me to my knees. His vows were heartfelt and funny, and when I read mine, my voice trembled but never broke. Walking back down the aisle as husband and wife, showered with rose petals by our beaming guests, I felt like I was floating. It was perfect. Every meticulously planned detail had converged into a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. The cocktail hour was a blur of hugs, laughter, and congratulations. Our photographer, Maya, a true artist with a calming presence, guided us through our portraits with ease. She captured the genuine happiness between me and Ben, the proud tears in my parents' eyes, and the boisterous energy of our friends. As we prepared to make our grand entrance into the reception ballroom, I took a deep breath, squeezing Ben's hand. Everything was going exactly according to the timeline. The band was ready, the guests were seated, and the champagne was poured for the toasts. This was it, the celebration of a lifetime. The dream I had so carefully constructed was real, and it was happening right now. I was completely unaware that the person I had chosen to stand beside me was about to take a sledgehammer to the entire beautiful structure. The ballroom was breathtaking. Fairy lights twinkled from the high, wood-beamed ceilings, casting a warm glow over tables adorned with elegant floral centerpieces and flickering candles. The band played a smooth jazz number as Ben and I made our entrance, the applause and cheers of our loved ones washing over us like a warm wave. Our first dance was to a song that had been hours since our third date, and as Ben spun me around the floor, I rested my head on his shoulder, closing my eyes to savor the moment. It felt like a scene from a movie, a perfect, crystalline memory in the making. After the dance, we took our seats at the sweetheart table, overlooking the smiling faces of our friends and family. The first course was served, and the room buzzed with happy conversation. Everything was flawless, moving with the graceful precision I had spent months orchestrating. First, my father, David, stood up to give his toast. He was nervous, fumbling with his notes, but his words were full of genuine love and pride. He spoke of my childhood, my determination, and the joy he felt seeing me so happy with Ben. He welcomed Ben into our family with a warmth that made my heart swell. The room was filled with awes, and I dabbed at my eyes with a linen napkin, my mom squeezing my hand from the adjacent parents' table. Next up was Ben's best man, who delivered a hilarious and heartfelt speech that had the whole room laughing. Everything was perfect. The atmosphere was exactly what I had hoped for, loving, celebratory, and focused on the new life Ben and I were starting together. Then it was Vanessa's turn. As the maid of honor, her toast was scheduled to be the final one before we cut the cake. She stood up, microphone in hand, and the room fell into a respectful silence. She looked stunning in her deep emerald bridesmaid dress, her confidence radiating even from across the room. She started off well enough, with a charming anecdote about us as children. "I remember when Ellie used to plan elaborate tea parties for her dolls," she began, her voice smooth and practiced. "Every doll had a name, a seat, and a specific type of imaginary cookie. Even then, she was the master planner, so it's no surprise she planned this incredible day." People chuckled, and I smiled, feeling a brief sense of relief. Maybe I had been wrong to worry. Maybe she was finally going to step up and be the sister I always wanted. She continued, watching her grow up and find someone as steady and kind as Ben has been a journey. There was a slight, almost imperceptible pause. Her smile tightened just a fraction. And speaking of journeys and new beginnings, she placed her free hand on her stomach, a gesture so deliberate it seemed to suck all the air out of the room. I felt a cold knot form in my gut. No, I thought, she wouldn't, but I knew she would. I knew her better than anyone. "It seems like our family is about to get a little bigger in more ways than one tonight," she announced, her voice rising with excitement. "Because I have a little announcement of my own to make. I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air for a split second before the room erupted. A wave of gasps was immediately followed by a confused but enthusiastic burst of applause. People at the surrounding tables turned to her, their faces breaking into surprised smiles. The spotlight, which had been metaphorically and literally on me and Ben just moments before, shifted instantly and empty. "Rely to Vanessa." She beamed, soaking it in, her hand still resting possessively on her stomach. I was frozen. I sat there in my beautiful white dress, a fixed, brittle smile plastered on my face, my hand clutching Ben's under the table so tightly my knuckles were white. I could feel hundreds of pairs of eyes darting between me and my sister, trying to gauge my reaction. It was like an out-of-body experience. I could see the scene playing out from a distance. The bride, forgotten at her own wedding, while the maid of honor accepted congratulations for her own life event. My meticulously planned timeline, the emotional arc of the evening, it was all shattered. This moment was supposed to be about celebrating our union, our future. Instead, it had become the Vanessa show, guest starring her unborn child. Ben leaned over, his voice a low, furious whisper in my ear. "Are you kidding me, right now?" I couldn't even respond. I just stared straight ahead, watching as my aunt and a few cousins rushed over to Vanessa's table to hug her. The band, unsure of what to do, hesitantly started playing a quiet, upbeat tune. The master of ceremonies looked at me with a panicked expression, seeking guidance, but I was incapable of giving any. The emotional momentum of the night was irrevocably broken. The toasts were over, but not with a final, heartfelt sentiment for the bride and groom. They had ended with a bombshell announcement that had nothing to do with us. The rest of the toast was a blur. Vanessa said a few more token words about me and Ben, something about how happy she was for us, but it was lost in the buzz she had created. The applause when she finished was for her news, not her words about our marriage. She sat down, looking utterly triumphant, as if she had just executed the most brilliant business deal of her life. For the next hour, the flow of the reception was completely disrupted. Instead of guests coming to our sweetheart table to congratulate us, they were forming a line at Vanessa's. The conversation at every table was no longer about our beautiful ceremony or our first dance. It was about Vanessa's pregnancy. When was she due? Who was the father? Did anyone know? She was being deliberately vague, which only fueled the speculation and kept the attention firmly on her. I felt a profound sense of humiliation. She hadn't just stolen a moment, she had hijacked our entire celebration. She had taken something deeply personal and sacred to me and Ben and made it secondary to her own drama. It wasn't an accident or a poorly timed, spontaneous decision. The calculated placement of her hand on her stomach, the carefully chosen words, it was a deliberate, strategic move designed for maximum impact. She had seen my perfect day, my masterpiece, and had decided to paint her own news right over the center of it, ensuring that when anyone remembered my wedding, they would remember her announcement first. As I sat there, smiling until my cheeks ached, I felt a cold, hard resolve begin to form in the pit of my stomach. She had made her move. She had no idea I would ever make one back. The rest of the wedding reception passed in a hazy, surreal fog. I went through the motions, cutting the cake with a smile that felt like a mask, tossing the bouquet with forced enthusiasm, and thanking guests for coming while my mind replayed Vanessa's announcement on a loop. Ben was my rock. He stayed by my side, his hand a constant, reassuring presence on the small of my back. He fielded questions from guests with grace, steering the conversation back to us whenever he could. "Yes, we're thrilled for Vanessa," he'd say with a tight smile, "but we're even more thrilled to finally be married. Did Ellie tell you about our honeymoon plans?" He was trying so hard to salvage the night for me, and I loved him more than ever for it. But the damage was done. The energy in the room had fundamentally changed. What had been a celebration of our love had splintered into a gossip session about my sister. I overheard snippets of conversation as I moved through the room. "I can't believe she announced it here," one cousin whispered. "So typical of Vanessa," another muttered. While their sympathy was appreciated, it almost made it worse, confirming that everyone saw the transgression for what it was. My own wedding had become a source of pity. My parents, David and Helen, were visibly uncomfortable. My mom kept shooting worried glances at me, her brow furrowed with concern. My dad, ever the stoic, had a muscle ticking in his jaw, a telltale sign of his anger. They tried to run interference, pulling Vanessa aside at one point for a quiet but tense conversation near the bar. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but Vanessa's dismissive gestures and eye rolls were clear enough. She felt no remorse. In her mind, she had done nothing wrong. She had simply shared happy news with the family. The fact that it was at my expense was irrelevant to her. E-night finally wound down, and as Ben and I made our way to the car for our grand exit, I felt an overwhelming sense of exhaustion, not from the joy of the day, but from the emotional labor of pretending everything was okay. The perfect day I had poured my heart and soul into felt tarnished, like a beautiful painting that had been vandalized. A week later, we were back from our mini-moon, a short trip to a quiet coastal town to decompress before our big honeymoon in Italy a few months later. We were trying to focus on the happy memories, on the beautiful ceremony and the love we felt, but the shadow of Vanessa's announcement lingered. That's when the email from Maya, our photographer, arrived. The subject line was simple: "Your wedding gallery is ready." My heart did a little flip-flop of excitement mixed with dread. I wanted to see the photos of our perfect moments, but I was also afraid of seeing visual evidence of the moment it all went wrong. Ben and I sat down on the sofa with my laptop and I clicked the link. The gallery was stunning. Maya had captured everything beautifully: the nervous energy of getting ready, the tears in Ben's eyes as I walked down the aisle, the golden hour light during our portraits. Looking at those first few hundred photos, I felt my joy returning. This was our day. These images proved it. Then we got to the reception photos. We scrolled through pictures of our first dance, the laughing faces of our friends, and then the toasts. There was my dad looking proud. There was Ben's best man mid-joke, and then there was a series of photos of Vanessa. The first shot showed her standing, smiling confidently at the crowd. The next one showed her hand moving to her stomach, and then there was the shot. It was a wide-angle photo, taken from the side of the room. In the foreground, Vanessa was at the microphone, beaming, her hand on her belly, clearly having just made her announcement. The crowd was a mix of expressions, some people clapping, some looking shocked. But the focal point of the photo, the detail that Maya's artistic eye had so perfectly captured, was my parents' table. My mother, Helen, had her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with what looked like horror. Her expression wasn't one of a happy grandmother-to-be, it was one of utter disbelief and disappointment. And my father was looking directly at Vanessa, and his face was a mask of cold fury. There was no joy, no surprise, just a profound, gut-wrenching disillusionment. He looked at his oldest daughter not with pride, but with a deep, palpable shame. It was all there, captured in a single, perfectly focused, high-resolution frame, the betrayal and my parents' immediate recognition of it. They weren't fooled by her happy news. They saw the selfishness, the cruelty, the blatant disrespect. They saw exactly what she had done to me. I zoomed in on their faces, my breath catching in my throat. Ben leaned closer. "Wow," he breathed. "Look at them, they knew." Suddenly, Maya sent a direct message through the gallery portal. "Ellie, check image 742. I almost didn't include it because it was so emotionally charged, but I felt you needed to see it. It tells a story." Image 742 was the one we were looking at. She knew. Maya, in her quiet, observant way, had seen the whole drama unfold and had known this single photograph was more than just a picture. It was evidence. It was validation. Seeing that photo changed everything for me. For the past week, I had been grappling with a confusing mix of anger and self-doubt. Was I overreacting? Was I being a selfish bride for not wanting to share the spotlight? A small part of me had worried that I was the one in the wrong. But this picture was undeniable proof. It wasn't just my perception. My parents, the people who loved us both, saw the malice in the act. Their expressions exonerated me from any self-doubt. It wasn't about sharing happy news. It was a hostile takeover of my wedding day. I saved the photo to my desktop, naming it simply proof. A cold, clear anger began to replace the hurt and confusion. Vanessa had counted on me being the bigger person, the quiet peacemaker I had always been. She expected me to swallow my feelings, put on a happy face, and eventually just get over it. That had always been the dynamic of our relationship. She created chaos, and I tidied up the emotional wreckage. But looking at the disappointment etched onto my parents' faces in that photograph, I felt a shift inside me. The planner, the organizer, the one who always made things right for everyone else, was done tidying. A new plan was beginning to form in my mind, one that wasn't about floral arrangements or seating charts. This would be a different kind of event altogether. And this time, I would be in complete control of the outcome. The photograph became my anchor. In the weeks that followed, whenever I felt my resolve waver or started to second-guess myself, I'd open the file and look at my parents' faces. It was a stark reminder of the reality of the situation. My anger was justified. My hurt was valid. And my growing desire for accountability was not petty, it was necessary. This wasn't just about one stolen moment at a wedding. As I began to reflect, I realized Vanessa's announcement was the culmination of a lifetime of similar, albeit smaller, betrayals. It was a pattern of behavior I had been conditioned to accept. I started thinking back to our childhood. I remembered my 10th birthday party, a meticulously planned slumber party with a mystery theme. I had spent weeks writing clues and creating decorations. Halfway through the night, Vanessa, who was 12, faked a dramatic ankle injury, wailing so loudly that my parents had to pack up all my friends and take her to the emergency room, only for the doctor to say it was a minor sprain. My party was ruined, and the entire focus shifted to coddling her. Then there was my high school graduation. I was the valedictorian, a huge achievement I had worked tirelessly for. On the morning of the ceremony, Vanessa accidentally spilled a full mug of black coffee down the front of my white dress, forcing me into a frantic, tearful panic to find a replacement just an hour before I was due to give my speech. She had apologized profusely, but even then, I'd seen a flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. Each memory was like a puzzle piece clicking into place. There was the time she revealed my secret crush to the entire family at Thanksgiving dinner, framing it as a funny joke. The time she borrowed a sentimental piece of jewelry my grandmother had given me and then lost it, only for me to find it in her jewelry box months later. She always had an excuse, a plausible deniability that made me question my own perceptions. She was just being dramatic, just being clumsy, just joking. My parents often played the role of mediators, urging me to forgive and forget. "That's just how your sister is, Ellie," my mom would say with a weary sigh. "Try not to let her get to you." Over the years, I had internalized this message. I learned to shrink myself to make room for her oversized personality. I dimmed my own light so hers could shine brighter, all in the name of keeping the peace. But the wedding incident was different. It was public, audacious, and unforgivable. Armed with the clarity the photograph had given me, I started to do something I'd never done before. I investigated. I began to talk to other family members, not in an accusatory way, but with casual, probing questions about their memories of Vanessa. My aunt confirmed my memory of the birthday party fiasco. "Oh, I remember that," she said over the phone. "Your mother was so frustrated." We all knew Vanessa was faking, but what could you do? A cousin remembered the graduation dress incident, adding, "Vanessa always had a flair for the dramatic, especially when the attention wasn't on her." It was like opening a floodgate. The small, isolated incidents I remembered were part of a larger, well-known narrative that I had been too close to see. Everyone knew what Vanessa was like. They had all just enabled her, just like I had, for the sake of family harmony. My husband, Ben, was my biggest supporter during this period of discovery. He listened patiently as I recounted story after story, his expression growing more and more grim. "She's a classic narcissist, Ellie," he said one evening, after I told him about how Vanessa had convinced our parents to help her with a down payment on a condo by claiming she was in financial trouble, only to find out she'd spent the money on a luxury vacation instead. "Everything is about her. Her needs, her desires, her drama. She can't stand for anyone else to have a moment that isn't about her." Hearing him say it so bluntly was validating. He wasn't biased by years of family history. He saw the situation with clear eyes, and he saw Vanessa for exactly who she was. The biggest revelation, however, came from a conversation with my mom. I decided to show her the photograph. I invited her over for coffee one afternoon, and after some small talk, I opened my laptop and turned it towards her. "Maya sent us the wedding photos," I said calmly. "There's one in particular I wanted you to see." I clicked on the proof, JPG file. My mom stared at the screen, her hand instinctively going to her mouth, just as it had in the photo. She was silent for a long time, her eyes fixed on her own horrified expression and my dad's angry one. "Oh, Ellie," she finally whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I am so sorry." Tears welled in her eyes. "We knew. The second she put her hand on her stomach, we knew what she was doing. Your father was so angry he could barely speak for the rest of the night." I finally felt I could be honest with her. "Why has everyone always let her get away with it?" I asked, my voice raw. "All my life it's been that's Jay. Ust Vanessa. Why was that ever an acceptable excuse?" My mom looked down at her hands, a deep sadness in her face. "I think we were just trying to keep the peace," she admitted. She was always so difficult, so prone to massive tantrums if she didn't get her way. It was always easier to give in, to smooth things over, than to deal with the fallout. "We were wrong, honey. We spent so many years trying to manage her that we failed to protect you, and I will never forgive myself for that." That conversation was a turning point. It wasn't just my fight anymore. My parents, finally seeing the cumulative effect of their peacemaking strategy, were firmly on my side. The lie wasn't just Vanessa's behavior. It was the silent family contract that enabled it. We had all been complicit in pretending her toxicity was just a personality quirk. The unraveling of that lie was painful, but it was also liberating. I was no longer bound by a misplaced sense of duty to get over it. The photograph was my proof, the stories were my evidence, and my parents' regret was my mandate. Vanessa hadn't just stolen a spotlight. She had built her entire identity on a foundation of lies and manipulation, and the whole family had helped her lay the bricks. It was time to tear the whole structure down, and as an event planner, I knew exactly how to orchestrate a demolition. With the truth exposed and my parents firmly in my corner, the vague idea of revenge began to solidify into a concrete, actionable plan. It couldn't be a petty, spur-of-the-moment act of retaliation. That was Vanessa's style, not mine. My response had to be meticulous, elegant, and perfectly timed. It had to be an event, orchestrated with the same precision and attention to detail that I had poured into my wedding. The goal wasn't just to get back at her. It was to hold her accountable in a way that she couldn't twist, deny, or dismiss. The justice needed to be as public as the humiliation she had inflicted on me. The perfect opportunity presented itself in the form of my parents' 35th wedding anniversary. It was about 10 months after my wedding, a significant milestone they had always planned to celebrate in a big way. They had initially talked about a large party, but after the wedding drama, their enthusiasm had waned. This was my opening. I went to them with a proposal. "Let me plan your anniversary party," I said. "My treat, a gift from me and Ben. We'll rent a beautiful space, handle all the catering, the invitations, everything. All you have to do is show up." My mom was hesitant, worried about more family drama. "I don't know, Ellie. I'm not sure I have the energy for a big party right now." But my dad saw the glint in my eye. He looked at me, then at my mom. "Let her do it, Helen," he said, a note of finality in his voice. "I think it's a wonderful idea." He understood this wasn't just about their anniversary. This was about reclaiming a sense of family pride and order that Vanessa had shattered. With their blessing, I threw myself into planning. The venue was an upscale art gallery with clean, white walls and dramatic lighting, a perfect blank canvas. I hired the best caterer in the city and worked with them to create an elegant menu of past hors d'oeuvres and food stations. I booked a string quartet for background music. Every detail was designed to scream class and sophistication, a stark contrast to the chaotic drama Vanessa thrived on. This would be a controlled environment. My environment. The guest list was carefully curated. It included all the same family members and close friends who had witnessed my wedding humiliation. Every single person who had seen Vanessa steal my spotlight would be present to see it handed back. Of course, Vanessa and her boyfriend, a guy named Mark who was pleasant enough but seemed perpetually exhausted by her antics, were at the top of the guest list. She couldn't possibly decline an invitation to her own parents' anniversary party without looking like a terrible daughter. I sent her a beautiful, custom-printed invitation, knowing she would see it as the grand social event she couldn't afford to miss. She RSVP'd, yes, within a day. The centerpiece of my plan was a video tribute to my parents. It was the perfect Trojan horse. On the surface, it was a loving, heartfelt gift for their anniversary. But its true purpose was to be the vehicle for my revenge. I spent weeks gathering old family photos and home video clips. I digitized hours of footage from VHS tapes, me and Vanessa as toddlers, family vacations, holidays, and birthdays. I interviewed my parents' oldest friends, my aunts and uncles, and even my grandparents via video call, asking them to share their fondest memories of my parents' 35 years together. Ben, with his software engineering skills, helped me edit it all together into a professional-looking 10-minute video. He designed title cards, smoothed out the audio, and added a beautiful, sentimental score. The video was structured chronologically, telling the story of my parents' life together. But woven into this narrative was a subtle, yet undeniable, secondary theme: the stark difference between their two daughters. I carefully selected clips that highlighted my quiet, consistent nature and Vanessa's penchant for drama. There was a clip of me at age 8, patiently helping my dad in the garden, followed immediately by a clip of Vanessa, age 10, throwing a tantrum because she didn't get the doll she wanted for Christmas. There was a photo of me winning the regional science fair, my face beaming with quiet pride, juxtaposed with a video of Vanessa at a dance recital, shoving another girl aside to be in the center of the stage. The contrast was damning but deniable. Anyone could argue it was just a coincidence, a simple collection of family memories. The final piece of the plan was the weapon Vanessa had unknowingly handed me, the photograph from my wedding. I had it professionally printed and framed, a large 11x14 print that I wrapped beautifully in silver paper and a white bow. It looked like any other anniversary gift. This would be presented after the video, the final, undeniable checkmate. As the date of the party approached, Vanessa was, predictably, a nuisance. She called me multiple times to complain about the dress code. Can't I just wear my new designer jeans? To suggest a more fun DJ instead of the boring string quartet, and to ask if she could give a speech. I'd love to say a few words about Mom and Dad, she'd said, and I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. Oh, that's so sweet of you, V, I replied, my voice dripping with false sincerity, but I have the whole evening timed out perfectly. We just won't have time for unscheduled speeches. You understand, as a professional yourself, how important a timeline is. Her silence on the other end of the line was immensely satisfying. I was beating her at her own game, using the language of control and planning that I was an expert in. She was used to bulldozing her way through life, but she was walking into my world now, a world built on schedules and run-of shows where every minute was accounted for and she had no power. The stage was set. The players were all invited. The props were in place. All I had to do was wait for the curtain to rise. The night of the anniversary party, the art gallery buzzed with an elegant energy. Soft music from the string quartet filled the high-ceilinged space, and guests mingled, sipping champagne and admiring the art on the walls. My parents looked radiant. My mom wore a classic navy blue dress and a pearl necklace my father had given her, and my dad looked handsome and relaxed in a tailored suit. They greeted guests with genuine warmth, their happiness a stark contrast to the strained anxiety I'd seen on their faces during my wedding reception. Ben was by my side, a reassuring presence as always, giving my hand a squeeze whenever he caught my eye. I felt a calm, focused intensity. I was the event planner, and my event was running perfectly on schedule. Vanessa arrived fashionably late, of course, with her boyfriend Mark in tow. She made a grand entrance, wearing a dress that was just a little too tight and a little too bright for the occasion, ensuring all eyes turned to her. Her baby bump was now prominent, and she made sure to rest her hand on it as she air-kissed her way through the crowd. She made a beeline for me. "Ellie, darling, the place looks nice," she said, her eyes scanning the room with a critical air. "A bit sterile for my taste, but Mom seems happy." I just smiled. "I'm so glad you could make it, Vanessa. We're about to start the tribute in a few minutes. Find a good spot to stand." As planned, at 8:30 p.m. sharp, I stepped up to a small lectern at the front of the gallery. A large projection screen behind me was blank. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice clear and steady. "Ben and I are so thrilled you could all be here to celebrate my wonderful parents, David and Helen, on their 35th anniversary." I spoke for a few minutes about my parents' love story, their commitment, and the beautiful example they had set for my sister and me. I could see Vanessa in the crowd, a bored expression on her face, already starting to check her phone. "As a special gift," I continued, "Ben and I have put together a little trip down memory lane. We hope you enjoy it." I nodded to Ben, who was manning the laptop, and the screen flickered to life. The video began, and the room fell silent. The first few minutes were pure, heartwarming nostalgia. There were black and white photos from my parents' wedding, clips of them bringing me and then Vanessa home from the hospital, and funny videos of family vacations. The guests were captivated, laughing at the funny moments and sighing at the sweet ones. I watched my parents. They were holding hands, tears of joy glistening in my mom's eyes. Then, the tone began to subtly shift. The juxtapositions I had so carefully selected started to play out. A clip of me patiently reading a book was followed by one of Vanessa screaming during a board game. A photo of my high school academic awards ceremony was followed by a clip of Vanessa's Sweet 16 party, where she was dramatically demanding more presents. No one clip was damning on its own, but together, they painted a powerful picture. I could feel a change in the room's atmosphere. The gentle laughter became more subdued, replaced by a quiet, focused attention. I glanced at Vanessa. Her smile was gone. She was staring at the screen, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, a frown deepening on her face. She knew what I was doing. She just didn't know how to stop it. The video culminated with recent photos, ending on a beautiful shot of my parents from a recent vacation, looking happy and in love. The final title card read, "Happy 35th anniversary, Mom and Dad, we love you." The room erupted in heartfelt applause. My parents, wiping away happy tears, hugged me tightly. "Oh, Ellie, that was the most beautiful gift," my mom whispered. But I wasn't done. As the applause died down, I picked up the microphone again. "I have one more small gift," I announced, picking up the beautifully wrapped frame from a nearby table. I walked over to my parents. "This is something that I think truly captures the importance of family and the moment you realize what matters most." I could see the confusion on Vanessa's face. This wasn't on her radar. This was an unscripted moment she couldn't control. I handed the frame to my dad. "Go on, open it," I urged. He carefully unwrapped the silver paper, his brow furrowed in curiosity. He lifted the frame and his eyes widened. My mom leaned in to look, and she let out a sharp gasp, her hand flying to her chest. It was the photograph. Image 742. The wide-angle shot of my wedding reception, with Vanessa basking in the glow of her pregnancy announcement, and my parents in the foreground, their faces etched with disappointment and fury. My dad held the photo up, turning it slightly so those standing nearby could see. A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. People who had been at the wedding recognized the moment instantly. Their eyes darted from the photograph to Vanessa, who now looked pale and cornered. "This photo," I said, my voice ringing with a newfound authority, "was taken at my wedding, at the exact moment Vanessa chose to announce her own pregnancy during her maid of honor toast." The murmurs grew louder. I had said the quiet part out loud. I had given voice to what everyone had been thinking. "For a long time," I continued, looking directly at my sister, "I thought my feelings of being hurt and disrespected were an overreaction. But this picture showed me the truth. It showed me that my own parents, on a day that should have been nothing but happy for them too, felt the same profound disappointment. They saw the selfishness of the act for what it was. I turned my attention back to my parents. This gift is a promise. A promise that from now on, our family will prioritize genuine love and mutual respect over drama and attention-seeking. It's a promise that we will no longer make excuses for behavior that hurts others, no matter who it is. The silence in the room was absolute. Vanessa looked like she had been slapped. Her face was flushed with a mixture of rage and humiliation. She opened her mouth to say something, probably to spin a narrative about how I was twisting a happy moment, but for the first time in her life, no words came out. She looked around the room, at the faces of her family and friends, and saw no support. She saw only knowing glances and quiet judgment. She had been exposed not by a screaming match or a petty act, but by a calm, factual, and undeniable presentation of the truth. Mark, her boyfriend, looked at the floor, wanting to be anywhere else. Finally, without a word, Vanessa turned and stormed out of the gallery, Mark trailing helplessly behind her. The unveiling was complete. The moment Vanessa stormed out of the gallery, it felt as though a collective breath was released. The tension that had held the room captive dissipated, replaced by a quiet hum of conversation. No one rushed after her. No one tried to smooth things over. Her dramatic exit, which would normally have become the central event, was treated as a footnote. The party simply continued. That, I realized, was the first sign of my true victory. I had not only exposed her behavior, but I had also broken its power over our family. Her tantrums no longer held everyone hostage. My dad came over and enveloped me in a huge hug. He didn't say anything for a long moment, just held me tightly. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet, but he was smiling. "I am so proud of you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You did the right thing. It was hard, and it took courage, but it doubled you." As the right thing, my mom joined the hug, kissing my cheek. "We love you, Ellie," she whispered. "Thank you." They understood that the evening hadn't just been about celebrating their past. It had been about charting a new course for our family's future, one built on honesty rather than appeasement. Over the next hour, numerous relatives and family friends approached me, not with gossip, but with quiet words of support. My aunt, the one who remembered the faked ankle injury, squeezed my arm. "It's about time someone stood up to her," she said softly. "We've all been tiptoeing around her for decades." A cousin pulled me aside and said, "My wedding is next year, and you've just inspired me to have a very direct conversation with my own dramatic sister about expectations." It seemed my quiet act of rebellion had resonated with others who had their own Vanessas to deal with. I hadn't just fought my own battle, I had given others permission to fight theirs. The framed photograph, my gift, was placed on the main table next to the guest book. It sat there for the rest of the evening, a silent testament to the night's events. It was no longer just a piece of evidence, it had become a symbol of our family's new chapter. In the weeks and months that followed, the dynamic shifted permanently. Vanessa didn't call. She didn't text. She cut off contact not only with me but also with our parents. In her mind, she was the victim, and we had orchestrated a public attack against her. She posted vague, passive-aggressive memes on social media about toxic family and cutting out negative energy, which a few of her friends blindly supported. But it didn't matter. We weren't playing her game anymore. Her silence wasn't a punishment, it was a relief. A profound, peaceful quiet settled over our lives, a quiet I hadn't realized I was so desperately missing. My relationship with my parents blossomed. Without the constant need to manage Vanessa's moods, we could finally have a normal, healthy relationship. We had dinners, went on weekend trips, and talked on the phone just to chat. We were building a new foundation, one based on the family we wanted to be, not the one we had been forced to be by its most volatile member. About 6 months after the party, Vanessa gave birth to a baby boy. We found out through a mass text sent by her boyfriend, Mark. My parents sent a gift and a card, wishing them well from a distance. I sent a simple congratulations text. There was no big family reunion, no dramatic reconciliation. We acknowledged the milestone, but we did not allow it to pull us back into her orbit. Her life was now her own, separate from ours, and we were all healthier for it. Ben and I went on our belated honeymoon to Italy, and it was everything we had dreamed of. We ate pasta, drank wine, and wandered through ancient streets, completely present with each other. The cloud that had hung over the start of our marriage had lifted. We were finally able to just be us, a team, without the looming threat of external drama. My quiet victory wasn't loud or explosive. It wasn't about shouting or revenge in the traditional sense. It was about reclaiming my own narrative through calm, meticulous planning. It was about using the truth as a tool, not a weapon. I didn't destroy my sister. I simply held up a mirror and let her, and everyone else, see the reflection. She was the one who couldn't stand the sight of it. The best revenge, I learned, wasn't about making the other person suffer. It was about creating a life for yourself where their actions no longer have the power to cause you pain. I had planned the perfect wedding, and my sister had tried to ruin it. In the end, she inadvertently gave me a far greater gift, the motivation to plan my own liberation. And that was an event no one could ever steal the spotlight from.